an explosion of agriculture in Stevens County and in the United States between 1861 and 1914, triggered by the Homestead Act and the creation of the Department of Agriculture. The department, suggested by President Lincoln in 1861 and made a reality in 1862, was to publish useful information, introduce new plants and animals, and test their effectiveness. The department then expanded its mission into education, experiment stations, and farm management sites to educate farmers and producers. A small prairie community on the rich black soils of Stevens County provided a location for the Department of Agriculture to implement its mission. From 1897 to 1909, the federal government had operated the Morris Indian School and established a campus for that mission on the edge of the village of Morris. 5 substantial buildings existed, with lesser farm buildings and storage sheds at the time the school closed. The future of this campus as a school of agriculture was enhanced by the nearly 300 acres of adjacent farmland, electric lighting, a sewer system, city water supply, and fire hydrants already established. The University of Minnesota was issued the administration of the new institution, which used this existing agri-centered location to begin the West Central School of Agriculture and Experiment Station. This site was the third in the family of agricultural schools to be established, following those in St. Paul and Crookston. By 1910, the first superintendent and staff were hired, and 103 students were enrolled in October 1910. The new era of agriculture education provided a classroom for an educator known as a pioneer for better breeding, better feeding, and better livestock management. Philip S. Jordan accepted a University of Minnesota appointment at the West Central School of Agriculture and Experiment Station in 1915 in charge of animal husbandry. Jordan's journey to the campus of the West Central School of Agriculture, where he spent his lifetime career, began in Milbank, South Dakota. He was born on July 25, 1888, the fourth child of Reverend W. H. Jordan and Cordelia Ann Scoble. He was christened with the name Philip Scoble Jordan. After his mother's death, the family moved to Minneapolis, Minnesota, where Philip graduated from East High School in 1907. Philip began his formal education at the University of Minnesota Agriculture College, graduating with a Bachelor of Science degree in 1913. His first job was a high school agriculture teacher in Hastings, Minnesota from 1913 to 1915. His student class was all female. Another teacher at the school, Ima D. Fraken, caught his attention, and by the following year, on July 21, 1914, they were married in Minneapolis. In 1915, Imedy and Philip moved to Morris, Minnesota, where he was to begin as an instructor at the West Central School of Agriculture. For over 40 years, he provided practical and progressive education in animal husbandry to students and to livestock producers in a 15-county region. While engaging with the students as an instructor for many subject matter courses, he was also an important force in the animal production and breeding programs. By 1923, Jordan was the longest tenured faculty with 8 years behind him. The yearbook was dedicated to him that year with the following to say, "In that 8 years, he has enjoyed the satisfaction of seeing it grow from a humble beginning to a large, well-organized, and very comprehensive department. New and updated barns and equipment have supplanted the old. New blood has been introduced into the herds, and new courses have been added to the curriculum." Walter Slim Hokanson, a student of Jordan's in 1930, had this to say about him at the age of 100.
I am very thankful to Mr. Jordan for my promotion to herdsman in 1930. It turned out to be my whole lifetime job, retiring in December of 1975. He was my boss from 1930 to 1955. Some of the classes I took were types and breeds, stock judging, beef production, feeds and feeding, dairy production, animal breeding, meats, and animal diseases.
Instructor Jordan required studious work in his class, but maintained a dry sense of humor at appropriate times. One example, as told by Walter Slim Hokanson, class of 1933.
He was very strict, but he was also very thorough and well thought of as a teacher. He asked the freshman students, "How do you know that this animal is a Holstein?" The freshman replied, "Because he's black and white." Mr. Jordan replied, "So is a skunk."
Jordan was also active in the extracurricular learning and activities at the school, organizing and coaching a meat judging team and a livestock judging team. The 1928 Moccasin, yearbook of the West Central campus, made this statement about the first place finish of the team.
They look just as sober as judges are supposed to look, but you should have seen them on February 6th of 1928 when the announcement was made that they had won the stock judging contest against 8 other agricultural schools of the Northwest and Canada.
Even though one of the principles Jordan was known for was, "Get a good education and work hard, there is no free lunch," he wasn't all work and no play. He was an avid team supporter of the Aggies football team. The team played on the large open field behind the gymnasium, and the fans parked the cars right up next to the field for viewing. In later years, this location on the campus was used for powwow events conducted by the Native American tribes to celebrate the early history of the campus as an Indian school. During this first decade at Morris, the Jordans were not idle in their family and community life. Imady and Philip had 3 fine sons. Philip Scoble Jordan Jr. was born October 17, 1915. Donald Fraken Jordan arrived March 13, 1917, and Robert Manseau Jordan on February 13, 1920. They lived at 408 East 4th Street upon their arrival in town. Then Imady began the plans for the perfect home, built by all the latest home management standards learned while acquiring her home economics degree at the University of Minnesota. This home, which became the family home, is located at 502 East 4th Street. The family belonged to the Federated Church in Morris, and the 3 sons graduated from schools in the Morris community. Philip Jr. attended the West Central School of Ag, graduating in 1935, went on to farm in Stevens County for a short time, then moved to California and finally Idaho. Donald graduated from Morris High School with the class of 1933. He went on to a career with the Federal Land Bank and retired in Wisconsin. Robert, a Morris High School graduate in the class of 1937, became well known as a professor in animal science with the University of Minnesota St. Paul campus. P.S. Jordan was active in a number of organizations in the county, including the Morris Livestock Shipping Association, the Stevens County Farm Loan Association, and the Kiwanis. His position with the West Central School of Ag offered him the opportunity to teach other groups at campus events and throughout the state. He was in great demand for his expertise. Each year, he offered education on the subject of meats at the annual Homemakers Workshop on the campus. West Central Homemakers Workshop was an inclusive event for women in rural Minnesota to learn the newest techniques and skills for homemaking and to have a few days retreat to gather together. His expertise in instruction rippled out into the state and region as graduates took this knowledge and applied it to their own husbandry on their farms. Their children in turn applied the practices in a new generation. P.S. shared his expertise at Boys and Girls Clubs and 4-H encampments on the campus. Following the year of Jordan's death in 1956, his fellow Kiwanis members honored his memory by presenting an award to the outstanding 4-H livestock project member in Stevens County. This prestigious award has been given annually every year since 1956. The first 4-H'er honored was James Willie. Shauna Kill received the award in 2012. Jordan's work at the West Central School and Experiment Station was varied and intense. It would be hard to say if he was proudest of the fine horses bred at the station, the beef cattle herd of Shorthorns, the Columbia sheep flock, the first in the Corn Belt, the Poland China hogs, or the high-producing Holstein herd. All efforts in livestock breeding and production gained status at state and national recognitions, with the first gold medal Holstein bull in Minnesota as one example. Perhaps one of the most widely recognized livestock milestones was founding Lamb Feeders Day in 1926. This annual event brought sheep producers to the campus to learn the most recent findings in the experiment station's trials. His 48 lamb feeding experiments ranged from feeds for fattening lambs, supplements, self-feeding practices, types of roughage to feed, and even finer and better wool production. He worked on a trial during World War II with the Columbia sheep herd. The wool was produced for military needs. Jordan was memorialized for his work at the 30th annual Lamb Feeders Day in 1957, the year following his death. A life well lived is summed up with excellent work ethics, a family that carries on your values, and a little enjoyment of your time here. Philip played the piano by ear and rather well, entertaining both family and friends with the newest music of the decade and some old favorites. His enjoyment of the outdoors spanned not only the barns and pastures of Stevens County, but the pheasant habitats of the region and the walleye spots on Lake Minnewaska near Starbuck. P.S. Jordan played a major part in putting the West Central School of Agriculture and the experiment station on the map as a livestock institution, and was a factor in the promotion of better livestock over a large portion of West Central Minnesota, an area of Minnesota that still excels in livestock production.